Welcome in to the Sleepers Media YouTube channel, where we bring you recaps, previews of every big game. I'm Riley Davis, joined by Brian Rauf, two guys who contribute to Heat Check CBB, and we'll be talking Auburn blowing out Indiana and Atlanta, final score of 104-76. Brian, what caught your eye about this game as it unfolded?
The fact Indiana was up double digits and
Mm-hmm.
lost by 30,
It's a bad place to be.
bad place to be. It's been a while since I've seen one backcourt completely overwhelm another backcourt
Mm-hmm.
in a power conference on power conference matchup. You'll
Yeah.
get this when teams play up, right? And you get bye games. But the last 30 minutes of this game, Auburn's backcourt did whatever it wanted.
It, and let me just say, I'm not trying to mess with IU fans. I don't have any beef with Hoosier Nation. I don't know if they call themselves that, but I'm assuming something along those lines. I don't want any beef with the Hoosiers. I like y'all. I like Mike Woodson. Seems like a good dude. Love Jalen Hood-Schifino, North Carolina kid. But when we previewed this game heading into the weekend, we had some IU fans in the comments on YouTube. Nothing too malicious, but saying like, "Oh, of course these guys aren't picking Indiana. Of course they're overlooking us." And
Yes, we know somewhat what we're talking about.
I just thought it was funny. It sort of played out exactly what we said with with the backcourts being the deciding factor. And I also again want to take a little victory lap on Trey Donaldson, just because he's someone whose game I've been high on this whole year. Just between I think his build being 6'3", over 200 pounds, and can provide a nice little foil to Aiden Holloway, a
Mhm.
little more of a defensive minded guard, former top 50 kid. And I thought the game really flipped when he started pushing the pace. Like, he was in the game when Auburn first went on its run and was able to
Mhm.
take control. You saw him getting guys involved in transition, and then thought he played a pivotal role in the press that they did. And that press was like, that was when it really started to shine that, like, Indiana for real doesn't have any guards.
Yeah, and Xavier Johnson didn't play when we recorded
Mm-hmm.
the preview. That was still up in the air, and there's no doubt he would have helped, right? But he's not a 28-point difference. Auburn was still the better team, and I think we saw with Indiana too. The complete lack of depth of guards
Mm-hmm.
was a major, major problem. There's just not like the Xavier Johnson's the only one who can be dynamic in that backcourt. Trey
Mm-hmm.
Galloway is a really good player, really good college player, but he's a role player
Yep.
and he's limited. I think he plays that role really well, but Indiana needs him to do more than that, just with the roster construction, which isn't the best this year. And
Yep.
you mentioned when Auburn was able to push the pace and the tempo of the game. That's what the difference was. Indiana's a team that is a very big team, wants to play a little bit more methodical, a little slower, so to use that size. Auburn, Bruce Pearl wants to play as fast as possible, and particularly with as many guards and talented guards as they have, they're built to play that way, and it just plays into a weakness for Indiana. Like, I don't know if Auburn is just on power ratings and things like that 28 points better than Indiana. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that's the case, but this is just a matchup that really favored one side, and it played out that way for at least the last 30 minutes.
On the Indiana side of things, are you at least encouraged? Like, their first four field goals, or the first four made field goals, were all 3-pointers. I think Mbako started out 2 for 2. Who else hit one in there? Ware hit one.
Where it won.
Of course, the final percentage was 6 for 17. So you started 4 for 4 and then went 2 for 13 the rest of the way. But is there
Yep.
anything to take away from that, or is that just like adrenaline pumping, and the guys are, you get out to a hot start and it sort of loosens everybody up, and then you sort of revert back to the old habits and the old patterns?
It it kind of depends, right? Like, it's nice to know that, or be reminded of that, that's in the arsenal,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's something that other teams have to count from the scouting report. But like, Indiana should not be taking 17 threes, particularly without Xavier Johnson, right? Like, it's not a ridiculous number,
Yeah, what's crazy is it doesn't even seem that doesn't seem that wild or that out of pocket.
right? It's
Like, this
not.
team
But
is
but
just
you
so
look at the
poor
guys on this
at
team, like, who do
shooting.
you want shooting the ball?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it's nice if, where being 1 for 2 is okay. Renault being 1 for 2 is okay. But 7 attempts from Baco, like that's somebody who was feeling himself a little bit and needed to get reeled in. Like again, 17 is not bad. I think in an ideal world, like you want to be able to stretch the court. But Indiana, particularly without Xavier Johnson, doesn't have that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Mbako, I mean, I know he's been playing better as of late. He's had 4 straight games in double figures, but if someone were to ask you, like, what does this guy do well? If they were,
Mhm.
if you were talking to an NBA guy who hasn't watched a second of Indiana but knows that Mbako is supposed to be an NBA prospect, like, would you be able to give an answer? Because I'm still trying to figure out, like, what is his role? What do they want him doing?
Well, he's having to play a little bit out of position
Mm-hmm.
because of where in Renault. He is the one of the three that has perimeter aspects to his game. So he is being shoved out on the perimeter. And he has skills out there, but he's at his best when those are part of his game
Mm-hmm.
and not his game. Right. So the Indiana fit was interesting because I didn't know how this would all work. And I give Mike Woodson credit for this point in the season. Indiana 7-2, or 2 in the Big Ten. They found a way to find some floor with this team by using those three guys, I think, more effectively together than I thought they could. At the same time, you're not getting the most out of perhaps your most talented player
Mm-hmm.
because of it, right? And to your point, he has not shown and is not this guy who dominates in a certain area. Like his NBA appeal, his long term appeal is that he's an athletic 6'8", 220-pounder who can
Right.
do a little bit of everything, right? And it's about what he can be more so than what he is right now, which
Mm-hmm.
is could be great down the line. But for Indiana right now, he's plugged in, playing out of position, and is somewhat limited because of that.
Mm-hmm. I will say he's done a pretty good job on the glass this year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, his defensive rebounding numbers are pretty good so far. Uh, as a whole, I still think like Indiana, I would expect them to be a lot better on the glass than they are though, just with playing so many big men.
Yeah.
And I know like really since if you like looking at the numbers throughout Woodson's tenure, they have never really been good either on the offensive or the defensive glass. But watching this game played out, I was kind of surprised. I want to say Auburn only grabbed, I think, 5 more rebounds than them. And even looking at the first half splits when it was more competitive, it was still like Auburn grabbed a few more. It just felt like Auburn could, whether it was Jalen Williams or whether it was Janai Broom, like even like Uh,
Well,
even
this
I mean Trey Donaldson had 7 boards. It just seemed like they could come down with the loose ball or the 50-50 plays whenever they needed to.
this was the same Indiana team that got out rebounded by Army, got out rebounded
Fair.
by Florida Gulf Coast. The rebounding stuff with this team is confusing because they play three big men. They should be good on the glass, and they're not. I don't know if it's necessarily an effort thing or a position thing. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's one or the other. But it's like they're outside the top 260 in the country in offensive rebounding,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have guys who don't play like who play on the perimeter. Everybody plays around the rim. It's just not like it is. I think one of the most puzzling things to me about this team because there is no reason why they should be as bad as they are on the glass, but they've been consistently poor.
Mm-hmm. And with Mbako, he only had 2 boards in this game, so maybe this was not the right game for me to praise his rebounding. But I know I feel like generally he's been less of the problem than like I don't know
Mm.
anybody not named Malik Renew or kel'el Ware. Like they're fine. I guess even those 2 guys you probably want to see a little bit more on the glass
You want to
from.
see more. You want to see more. You absolutely do. And there's some of it where these are guys who are tall and are big, and in Ware and Baco's case, throughout their careers have been able to out athlete, out length rebounds and not have to work as much for them. And I think you're seeing some bad habits need to be broken in that sense from a boxing out and a like the technical aspects of rebounding.
Hmm.
But it's also got to be a team effort. Somewhat the best rebounding teams, everybody rebounds, and Indiana's like the reverse of that. Nobody rebounds.
It does. It really like those offensive rebounding numbers are truly shocking when you're going to play this giant lineup and you can't shoot. Like, why would you not
Right.
just send everybody to the offensive glass?
Right.
I
Well, they're bottom five in the country in 3-point rate, like three
it's
points attempted per their like in relation to their total shot attempts. So it's not like they're trying to stretch the floor and can't.
mhm.
Everybody's just in the paint and they just it's not working.
Well, let's turn to Auburn. Let's because where are you at with the Tigers right now? Because I know I've
Yep.
mentioned this is a team I've been high on all season, and definitely my agenda took a hit when they lost in Boone to App State. But this is the type of game where if you truly are a top 25, top 15, even by KenPom metrics, they're ranked 11th right now. Like this is what you want to do to a team that still projects as
Yeah.
like a 10 or 11 seed in the tournament.
This was big from a validation standpoint, particularly after that App State win. It is not going to be one of those wins when they pull up your resume in February and March and they're talking about what seed line you're going to be on and that has the section for like best wins. This isn't going to be there, but this helps all your metrics and it helps
Hmm.
establish yourself internally and externally at a certain level that Auburn wants to be at. For Auburn to maintain, I think, at top 15, top 20 level, they need consistent guard play. This game showed us what their guards can do, what this backcourt can do, but they're young. And they're having some inconsistencies and some fluctuations in their production and overall level of play. That should iron out as the season goes on. And if they're able to maintain anything close to this level, that bodes well. That bodes well for Auburn.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it was a huge game for Aiden Holloway to sort of get really his best game since that Baylor loss.
Yeah.
He had been pretty quiet since then, and we know that he's had the talent. Like we know that Bruce Pearl thrives with those types of guards, especially he's done a great job at scouting um, really players in that 15 to 50 range nationally, which I think Holloway fit into. You got a lot from him. You got a pretty good game out of Chad Baker Mazzara as well. He's a guy who I think he ended up shooting 4 for 8 from the field, but some of his shot selection is still like, why can't Bruce Pearl help himself getting these like Katie Johnson type gunners? Like he had some really crazy mid-range shots that I couldn't believe went in.
What would
But
an Auburn team be without just some mindless shot chuckers?
I mean, in some ways, it does sort of fit with like Pearl's run and gun type
Yeah.
philosophy. You probably need dudes with that fearless mindset who are just going to get those shots up, regardless of what happens.
Fearless
Um,
mindset. That's a great way to put it. Good positive spin. Fearless mindset.
um, to an extent, though, you got to have some of that to be like, hey, I'm just going to chuck this off balance mid range shot and hope it goes in,
Oh yeah.
which
And
is what like Baker Mazzara took at least 2 of those
yeah,
in this game.
that kind of rational confidence, like Auburn gets on these runs where it's like an avalanche and you blink and they put up 15 points. It's because they have a team full of guys with irrational confidence who shoot irrational confidence shots and they score 15 points in a minute. And you're like, how, what just happened?
Uh huh. Yeah. Kind of to that point as well. Like for Indiana fans, you just got to be just like beside yourself that you got a good Denver Jones game, a good KD Johnson game, a good Chad Baker Mazzara game. Like all three of those guys were on for Auburn, and it's this. I'm gonna go ahead and say this: if Auburn goes 3 for 3 with their like erratic shot chuckers who are just on and making the shots they take, they're gonna win 100% of the time. You get efficient games from all three of those, they're gonna win those games.
They are counter. They all had good games because they were playing Indiana, who did not have the horses and the kind of matchups they needed to defend them.
Okay, fair point. Fair point. Lastly, I feel like we should at least give a mention to Jalen Williams, who was cooking.
Yes.
24 points, 7 assists, 6 boards. This is kind of what we expected from him. That this was he was a big
Good
reason
game.
why I was high on Auburn going into the year. His pairing with Janai Broom that I thought could, you
Mm-hmm.
get that with a dynamic guard like Holloway and Donaldson, a little bit of a glimpse into what the ceiling can be. Because yeah, it was by far his best game this year.
Yeah, it is very good. Like this is the blueprint overall for Auburn, right? You're able to push the tempo, get good guard play. You have the two big guys playing well off each other and both producing, both being threats. That makes you in contention to compete with that top tier in the SEC. Like this was the recipe.
Good little building block for them. They got another couple cupcakes before we get to see them tested again. But I guess they got a USC game in there, but that's not really a challenge anymore. But
Yeah,
they'll need to keep building and get some more consistency with those guards, get them comfortable. So good stuff.
cool,
All right, I'm gonna email this to Greg. So talk to you
awesome.
later, Ralph.
Thank you, sir. I gotta go write an article now, and then I'll go to bed.
What are you writing on? Is it a report?
Yeah. Let's see what I got today. I'm writing about Gonzaga's depth being a problem. JV and McCollum for Oklahoma. Caleb Love putting up efficient numbers. UCLA kind of sucking, and Indiana State being number 54 in KenPom.
I saw Lucas rank them. I didn't realize they were that high.
They're good. He's turned me on to them. They have a like rookie Nikola Jokic looking chubby dude with goggles who has the same kind of game.
I would watch, but I'm like generally opposed to Missouri Valley hoops.
Why?
Out of principle. I've tried to get into Arch Madness before and I always get bored watching it.
It's Big Ten light.
Yes, I think that's why.
It's Big Ten light, but they teams do well in the tournament. So
With the Caleb Love, I mean those I know Reno sent those stats to the to
yep,
Scrapple. I
that's where I
have to
ripped them from.
I'm wondering if is there any world where like if you swapped Cormac Ryan with Caleb Love this year, is there any world where you get this version of Caleb Love that coexists in this like three guard lineup? But I also think obviously Cormac is like way less ball dominant, and Ingram, Cadeau, and RJ all want to play with the ball in their hands.
You're just trying to get rid of Cormac.
Cormac has been bad, man. I know his ankles like exploded in Atlantis. I still believe in Cormac long term, but he's just got to get out of this slump. His mechanics were so like he was he was doing like okay, I don't know if you in that pin game
Mm-hmm.
somebody the white boy Brown, the lefty. I feel like there's mid-major lefties so often have that weird like kick that they do as they
Yeah.
land. Cormac was doing those weird kind of kicks and it his shot like dude, you got to get your mechanics back on track. This ain't it.
Well,
We shall
yeah.
see.
It like was that Notre Dame on a bad Notre
But
Dame.
but at least he shot 35% for his Notre Dame career.
Like
Like
I know we made fun of Mick Cronin earlier today because he was talking about like how this guy who played 4 years at Richmond out rebounded them. And I also make fun of Mick Cronin, but like there's something to that. Like you were there, like a lot of times you're there for a reason.
yeah,
You know, we can't be surprised when those wars pop up. Not everyone's going to be a Dalton Connect. Not everyone's going to be like a CJ McCollum or a Seth Curry. Like it just you get a lot of guys who are there because there are some flaws in their game.
yeah. I mean, Cormac has just played well in the tournament before, like that Notre Dame team that won a couple games 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think he'll be fine as the season goes on, and he'll should be a
He's
good
got it.
ancillary
It's there's
piece.
going to be regression back to the mean
Yeah,
at
yeah.
some point, right?